And I am joined now by the host of the Hugh Hewitt Show on Salem Radio Network, NBC News political analyst Hugh Hewitt. Thanks so much for being here. Really appreciate it.
Good to be here this afternoon. Difficult subject. Very
difficult subject, and so I appreciate your coming in to talk about it. I want to start right there. The Veterans Family Group with which Fisher is affiliated, Vote Vets, actually called Trump's comments un-American. You heard the emotion in her voice when she discussed this. Are his comments un-American, Hugh?
It is my view that the Gold Star families, there are 6,000 of them, whatever opinion they hold is not to be challenged by a civilian like me. And so if a Gold Star family likes Trump or doesn't like Trump, likes Secretary Clinton, doesn't like Clinton, I do not criticize them. They are their opinions. I separate and do not react to it because I believe very strongly about this. I've had Gold Star mothers in my studio. I've helped Gary Sinise raise money for the families. I've helped the Semper Fi Fund do the same sorts of things. I keep the badge of J.P. Blecksmith on my studio in California. His father, he was killed in the first Battle of Fallujah on November 11, 2004. His father is a friend of mine, so I know that each of these family members, fathers and mothers, sons and daughters, husbands and wives, have their own views of everything, and I don't react to anything they say because the only reaction for a civilian is to listen very carefully, empathize, and try very much to understand the depth of the sacrifice. My advice to Mr. Trump is to meet with the families of the fallen. And I point to President George W. Bush's statement today. He doesn't want to be involved in the but he put out a statement today that he prays for these families every day. That's the right response.
I want to unpack your answer. There's a lot there. Would you go so far as to call the comments un-American?
No, I don't call any comments un-American because we have a wide and robust spectrum. They certainly were awful. I would not make them. I rebuked them. I was here with Alex Witt yesterday, and I said pretty much the same thing. The Khans are American patriots. Mr. Khan was very eloquent on this set with Chuck on Sunday and very gracious to Mr. Trump. And he has to practice with the empathy, and I think he ought to sit down with Gold Star family.
And you say that. Do you have any indication, based on what you're seeing from Mr. Trump, based on the tweets that he is putting out today, he was tweeting about this yet again, that he would meet with them?
I haven't seen it. It's my recommendation. If I were him, I'd call up Gary Sinise, who's the Bob Hope of our generation and spends his time with these families and with wounded warriors. And I would ask Gary to come to my campaign and sit down and counsel me on how to do this. It's very hard. If you're a civilian like me, I married into a military family, so I've learned via my wife and her family how to deal with this. But if you're a civilian, it's very hard to learn how to do it. And it's always emotion and fraught, and sometimes you just don't know how to do it. And he began in his interview with George Stephanopoulos to respond the right way, and then he veered off course. And then he dug deeper. And so it's awful, and it should stop. It has stopped, and now he could go further.
You raised the example of former President George W. Bush, who a lot of folks have talked about today in terms of how this type of situation should be handled. President Obama, both of them criticized by military families, veterans, Gold Star families. When you make an enemy and wage a war in this way with a Gold Star family, can you be commander-in-chief if you don't understand that unwritten rule that you don't take on
George W. Bush had a long-running disagreement with Cindy Sheehan, if you'll recall, one of the, I believe, Code Pink founders. I'm not sure about that, but she was certainly adamant against the war. And even at the height of her criticisms of him, President Bush treated her with respect. I'm quite certain Dorothy Woods, who is the surviving spouse of Ty Woods, who was killed on the roof in Benghazi, has put out a very hard-hitting video directed at Secretary Clinton for telling her to move on. And Dorothy Woods said, I don't have to move on, and you don't get to tell me to move on. So they're both tin-eared. I think they're both civilians who don't really know what they're doing. They both should listen to their critics.
I wonder to what extent you are concerned about down-ballot races when you see yet another controversy erupting around the Trump campaign. Let me read you a few of the comments from some of the folks who are up for re-election. Kelly Ayotte said, quote, I'm appalled. Roy Blunt, stop responding to every criticism. Rob Portman, Rob does not agree with Donald Trump's remarks. Marco Rubio, it's unfortunate. Sergeant Khan is a hero. Pat Toomey, the Khan family deserves our gratitude and honor. Anything else is inappropriate. You have these folks who are yet again put in this tough position of having to figure out how to respond to Donald Trump and controversial comments that he's made.
Let me draw a line between the Gold Star families and the politics, because I really do feel, I've worked for years, Gold Star families are different. I want to put them over. My assessment of the politics has nothing to do with how I believe they ought to be treated. On the political side, Donald Trump's running a volatile campaign. He is counting on the vandals overrunning Rome. He is counting on a massive turnout of people who have not previously voted. He's counting on winning Pennsylvania and Ohio and Florida with votes of people who feel left out, disappointed, disengaged. I do not believe this episode or any one episode that does not involve race would cost him the election. And the Judge Curiel comments were the one episode where I thought Republicans were about ready to abandon him in droves. He's moderating again. He is a learning machine. He's learning how to navigate politics. And so I don't think this is going to have a lasting impact on the election. It ought to have a lasting impact on how America treats Gold Star families.
But what about down-ballot races? I understand what you're saying about Donald Trump, but you don't think it's going to ultimately hurt these down-ballot races?
Again, I think if those candidates treat Gold Star families with respect, and they all have. John McCain's statement was the hardest hitting of them all. He's in a tough re-election battle in Arizona. Kelly Ayotte has been a force for great good on the Armed Services Committee for soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines, as is Rob Portman. No, I don't think it's going to have an impact on them, but if they... Every one of them needs to, and most of them already have, learned how to talk to Gold Star families.
Hugh, before I let you go, I want to read you from your column over the weekend. You say of Donald Trump, he has many flaws and some strengths, but he isn't a racist or a dangerous demagogue, a Mussolini in waiting, a Caesar off stage. He isn't going to roll Paul Ryan, Mitch McConnell, or, most formidable of all, the Constitution. I guess my question would be, what proof do you have for all of that? And is there anything that he could say that would make you say, you know what? I'm not going to support him.
The Judge Curiel comments had me saying that a plane was headed to the mountain, and he learned from that, and he backed away from it. I do not believe... I have taught common law for 20 years at the Fowler School of Law at Chapman. I have great belief in our Constitution standing as an absolute bar to demagoguery. I don't think Paul Ryan and Mitch McConnell are easily rolled. I know both men very well. And I don't believe for a moment that he's a dictator in waiting or a demagogue. In fact, I thought that the line about him being a demagogue crossed a rhetorical line that we ought not to cross in America. He is simply strong-willed indifferent. He's outside of our ordinary politics, and he's different. But no, I don't worry about that. I'm going to vote for Donald Trump because the Supreme Court hangs in the balance. If Hillary Clinton gets one selection, it goes left and conservatism is done, and you can't believe anything she said. I hope today you get on the point, of course, of the program to the fact that yesterday to George Stephanopoulos, to Chris Wallace, she out and out lied again about Director Cohen.
We're going to talk about the emails, no doubt about that, Hugh Hewitt. Thank you so much.